Hey folks, this is Kelani. After checking out how the DPS Demon Hunters are doing in the beta so far, it's only fitting that we finish off Demon Hunter specs and look at Vengeance. There's a few overall changes happening to tanks to make them a little less self-reliant, from what I've heard through the grapevine, though I wouldn't have guessed at all after playing around with the Demon Hunter's tank spec. I thought you were pretty much unkillable as a tank during Legion, but that doesn't seem to have changed too much for Vengeance at least. Lots of self-heals, a good amount of meatiness to actually take the hits, and a good selection of utility to give you a few options no matter what you're facing. Let's dive straight in. So Vengeance Demon Hunters use two resources. The first is your resource bar of Pain. You generate it with some abilities and spend it with others. Pretty standard. The other resource they have is Souls. You can generate souls or have a chance to generate souls via a few different methods, and you consume them to heal yourself or empower other abilities. The first ability we have is Shear, which deals a bit of damage and generates 10 pain, as well as shattering a lesser soul fragment from your target. Soul Cleave costs 30 pain, deals damage to anything in front of you and heals you for a good amount, but also consumes up to 2 nearby soul fragments. Use Shear to generate pain and souls, and Soul Cleave to spend pain and absorb souls. Easy enough. We also have Immolation Aura, which deals AoE damage and more AoE damage while generating 20 pain over 6 seconds. And that's actually kind of it for our main base abilities. We do have Throw Glaive for a quick ranged attack which can hit up to 3 targets and generates a high amount of threat, useful for pulling or trying to grab some adds that are beating up your DPS. But we're a meaty tank, so we have quite a few defensive abilities to help keep us healthy as well. We wouldn't be a Demon Hunter without Metamorphosis. For Vengeance, Meta increases your current and maximum health by 30% and armor by 100% for 15 seconds. You also generate 7 pain per second to help spam those Soul Cleaves. We also have Fiery Brand, which deals a good chunk of damage but also reduces the target's damage towards you by 40% for 8 seconds. To round things out, we have Demon Spikes, a general active mitigation ability which increases your armor and your parry chance by 15% for 6 seconds. This has 2 charges on a 17-second cooldown and no longer costs pain. A lot of abilities also tie into some passives, so let's have a look at those. Our mastery is Fell Blood, which increases the armor bonus of Demon Spikes and increases your attack power. Shattered Souls can generate a soul fragment when you kill a target, which heals you for quite a lot of health, and if you consume a lesser soul fragment, it instead heals you for 8% of all damage taken in the last 5 seconds, with a minimum of 1% of your maximum health. So the more damage you take, the more your lesser souls from Shear and other sources will heal you up. Consuming a Demon Soul also gives you a damage boost. Demonic Wards is the passive that actually allows us to tank. It reduces all damage taken by 10% and increases stamina and armor. Vengeance Demon Hunters also get Chaos Brand, but this time it works off of fire damage. Any target afflicted by Chaos Brand takes 5% more magic damage from all sources. We also still have Double Jump because Demon Hunters are just cool. I did mention some utility earlier on, so let's go through those abilities as well. We still have Consume Magic, a 10-yard interrupt which generates 50 pain on a successful interrupt. Infernal Strike is a mini heroic leap with 2 charges to help us get around a bit faster. Sigil of Flame deals AoE damage and damage over time to anything it manages to hit. Sigil of Misery causes all enemies hit to cower in fear for 20 seconds, which breaks upon damage. And Sigil of Silence will silence anything hit for 6 seconds. As a tank, we also have to be able to taunt, so we still have Torment. Spectral Sight is still kicking around, and honestly I'm excited to see if this will have any uses in Battle for Azeroth. It had some interesting potential in Legion, but all the demons are going away, so I guess we'll see. That's it for all of our baseline abilities. Not too bad, quite a bit of utility, especially in those sigils, and you have the basic necessities for a tank. Let's check out the talents to see how much depth they add. On the first row we have Abyssal Strike, which increases the range of Infernal Strike and reduces its cooldown by 8 seconds. So if you want to hop around a bit more, a good talent choice. Agonizing Flames increases the damage of Immolation Aura, and while it's active you move 30% faster, and Razor Spikes causes Demon Spikes to increase the physical damage you deal, and all of your melee attacks snare your target for 6 seconds. Up next we have Feast of Souls, which gives Soul Cleave a heal over time effect. Fallout gives Immolation Aura's initial burst a chance to generate soul fragments, and Burning Alive causes your Fiery Brand to deal damage every 2 seconds and spread to another enemy. Flame Crash causes Infernal Strike to create a sigil of flame when you land. Very cool for those AoE opportunities and works very well with the reduced cooldown talent. You can just hop around everywhere, leaving death in your wake. Charred Flesh causes Fiery Brand to increase the damage of your fire abilities against the target by 20%, and Fell Blade is another active ability which generates 30 pain. It's kind of like a better version of Shear, and it's also a little charge. Using Shear can reset the cooldown, so if you're lucky, you can drown yourself in pain. Soul Rending increases your leech by 5% and a further 25% while in meta. Feed the Demon reduces the cooldown of Demon Spikes by 0.5 seconds whenever you consume a Soul Fragment. And then we have Fracture, which is way more fun than Fracture was in Legion. Now Fracture replaces Shear, doesn't cost pain but instead generates 25, and it also shatters 2 lesser Soul Fragments with a single swing. It does have a 4-second cooldown and comes with 2 charges, so it's more limited than Shear, but you're going to be spending time on other abilities too, so the cooldown shouldn't be too noticeable. I think if the only thing that changed from Legion to BFA was the Fracture talent, a lot of people would still be very happy. Concentrated Sigils forces sigils to activate at your location instead of using a targeting reticle, and increases their effect's durations. Sigil of Chains is a mini AoE grip which pulls everything within its effect to the centre of the sigil, very useful for grouping up trash mobs, and Quicken Sigils causes all sigils to activate 1 second faster, and their cooldown is reduced by 20%. Gluttony gives you a chance to activate meta for 5 seconds whenever you consume a soul fragment. Fell Devastation blasts everything in front of you with some nasty fire breath, and heals you if you damage something. And then we have Spirit Bomb, which consumes up to 3 soul fragments and then explodes them, dealing damage per soul fragment used to nearby enemies, and applies frailty to them. You heal for 10% of all damage you deal to targets afflicted by frailty. On the last row we have Last Resort. Sustaining fatal damage will instead trigger meta and return you to 30% health with a hefty 8-minute cooldown. So it's just a really nice get out of jail free card where if you happen to mess up and you would have died, you don't die instead and you get to trigger meta. Though that 8-minute cooldown means you're probably only going to get that once per fight. Void Reaver causes enemies struck by Soul Cleave to deal 8% less damage to you for 4 seconds, and Soul Barrier gives you an absorption shield on a 30-second cooldown. You also consume all soul fragments within 25 yards to add to the shield, still a very powerful talent which allows you to really prepare for damage, and with those fracture changes, you should have no shortage of soul fragments. This shield is also one of the best ways to protect against magic damage now that we lost our other cooldown. So quite a lot of Vengeance remains the same or similar to Legion, with just enough changes in the right places to kick things up a notch. It feels pretty strong in dungeons from what I've experienced, and from what I've heard from other players on the beta, a lot of tanks are really enjoying the Demon Hunter changes. There's a few different sets of talents which work really well with each other, and depending on which talents you take, you could end up playing a little differently. I also don't feel that reliant on healers, providing I don't go too crazy with pulls. We have plenty of tools to deal with a variety of obstacles, with some of the best mobility you could ask for from a tank. We do lose an active cooldown to reduce incoming magic damage, which might end up being a bit of a problem, but I guess we'll have to cross that bridge whenever we come to it. From what I've heard, magic damage reduction is being removed almost across the board, so I guess they don't want tanks being able to mitigate magic damage too much. Soul Barrier is going to be a very important talent in that regard, I think, just because you can create a shield which will absorb any type of damage. The change to Shear, to always shatter a soul, is fantastic on its own, even if you don't pick up Fracture. That means you can always plan for your soul fragments. There's no RNG for the baseline kit. If you do pick up Fracture, the change to generating pain instead of costing pain gives you so much more breathing room. You can generate so many souls so quickly without having to sacrifice your defense or self-healing. Honestly, your pain resource is kind of an afterthought at this point, because you don't even have to save it for demon spikes. No pain cost on demon spikes is pretty fantastic, and the cooldown is reduced based on your haste, so haste is probably going to be an important secondary stat in Battle for Azeroth. You can also happily soul cleave away because that's the only thing you're spending pain on. The only problem that I would have with this right now is that taking Fracture feels a bit more fun, but does end up leaving you twiddling your thumbs a little bit more than if you don't take it. If you just keep Shear, then you can spam Shear all day long, which might not be as fun for me personally, but at least you always have a button to push. It also opens up some other options on that talent row which might end up being quite powerful. Reducing the cooldown on Demon Spikes or giving yourself an extra bit of leech could prove to be the better choices. I'm excited to see what everyone comes up with and how everything ends up being balanced, especially with the Azerite armor bonuses thrown into the mix. I know there's one which shields you whenever you absorb a soul fragment, which seems like it could stack with so many other sources of healing to make you unkillable. But that's it for this little preview of Vengeance Demon Hunters. What do you think of the changes so far? Does Demon Hunter interest you as a class going into battle for Azeroth? Leave all your thoughts in the comments section below. A big thank you to all of our supporters over on Patreon. If you want to join the names at the end of every video, you can find a link in the description below. Remember to leave a like just below the video before you leave, and if you want to see more, make sure to subscribe. But apart from that, thanks for watching folks, good luck and have fun, and as always I will see you next time.